Hey YouTube, on Monday, October 23rd, 2017, I test rode the 2018 Scott Spark 920 and the 2018 Scott Genius 720. Scott labels their bikes in the 900 series. Those are 29ers. All their 700 bikes are 27.5 plus. One thing I was very curious about was the actual weights of these bikes. Scott is one of the few manufacturers who lists the weights of their bikes. They list the 920 as 28 pounds, and I was somewhat skeptical of that, but when I actually got the bike in my hands and weighed it, it weighed 28 pounds 4 ounces. That's not bad. With pedals. So this is a very honest weight that they're giving there. The Genius 720, they say weighs 29.1 pounds. When I weighed the one that I rode, it weighed 30 pounds 3 ounces. This is probably a weight without pedals. Pedals usually weigh about a pound. So I think their weights are pretty damn honest, and that's good to know because the bike I really want to get is the Scott 700 tuned, which they list as 26.68 pounds. My current bike is a Rocky Mountain Sherpa, which weighs 31 pounds. The really cool thing about this bike is it's a 150 travel with this twin lock lever, and you can adjust the travel from 150 down to 110 front and rear with a single lever push. And if you push the lever a little further, it'll lock out both shocks. I didn't really think much about that until I actually rode this bike, because my current bike is a 120 travel bike and I never really lock it out except on the dirt roads, and then I have to flick two levers with my hands and they're hard to reach. Having a single lever to unlock is huge. I think it's very, very cool. So I've been wanting to go to a longer travel bike, and some of the bikes I've looked at are the Santa Cruz Hightower, the Pivot Mach 5 Carbon. I like this bike, but it just seemed like it was too much travel. It's 160 in the front, and yes, you can flick this lever and flick that lever and have less travel, but doing that is nowhere near as convenient as what they have set up on the Scott Genius and the Spark. The Spark goes from, I believe it's 120 travel to 85 to lockout with the one flick of the lever. So anyway, back to the 5.5 Carbon. This felt very, very floppy, the front end. I had a lot of trouble steering it. My wheel just always wanted to turn, and I didn't feel that way on the Spark or the Genius. I also test rode the Pivot 429 Trail, which was a good bike, but I think this is only 110 or 120 travel. So I actually set up a Strava segment for just this section of trail, which I was going to climb. It's 0.8 miles long, 8% grade. So I've ridden this 96 times. I broke my fastest time on this segment by 28 seconds, which just blows my mind. I first rode the Spark. Then I rode the Genius. Both bikes were within like a couple seconds of each other. My iPhone had the Genius being faster. My Garmin, which had my heart rate, had the Spark being like 3 seconds faster than the Genius. So if I actually compare my efforts here, when I used the Spark 920, it took me, these times, the 1031s were recorded with my iPhone. These times, because I wanted my heart rate, were recorded with my Garmin Edge 810. And my iPhone was significantly faster than my Edge 810, even though I rode the exact same segment with both devices. But anyway, this time of 1046 is still faster than my fastest ever, which was 1059. So when I rode the Spark 920, my average heart rate was 149 with a high of 156. And I rode that bike first. Then I rode the Scott Genius 720, and my average heart rate was 153 with a high of 161. So apparently I went a little bit harder when I rode the Genius 720. So maybe the Spark is easier, or maybe I was tired from my first run. I was extremely impressed that I was faster on both of these bikes than I was on any bike I've ever owned. Uphill. And the Genius has 150 millimeters of travel. Now the Spark, while I was climbing, I put into the 85 millimeter travel mode, and I felt like I was bouncing off of everything. I don't know if the rebound wasn't adjusted very well or what, but I quit doing that and I put it back into the 120 travel mode for the entire climb. And I climbed seated the whole way. The Genius, I put into the 100 millimeter travel mode from 150 and left it there the entire way and was very, very happy with it. 96 times I've ridden this, and I had my 2 fastest times. I'm certainly not the fastest guy around, but I'm 75 out of 163 people. And this is a trail I ride very, very often. It didn't seem like I went any harder than normal. Now, going down, there's a trail called Rocky Mountain Pipeline. I'm 27 out of 99 going down it. My fastest time ever is 3:25. That's on the Rocky Mountain Sherpa. It was during an event called the Berkshire Enduro Challenge, so I really pushed it down there. When I got on the Spark and went down, I felt terrible. The 29er wheels with the sharp corners, and these trails are very, very tight and very slow. So my fastest time was on my Rocky Mountain Sherpa was 3:25, and on this bike I did a 3:47, so 22 seconds slower than my best, and I blame that mostly on 29er wheels. I just am not comfortable on them. I don't know why. There's tons of people faster than me who ride 29ers. So the next bike obviously was the Scott Genius 720. Went down the same trail, and I had a time of 3:35. And my best, again, was 3:26 and 3:47 on the 920, on the Spark 920. So I was much faster on the Genius, and I forgot to lock it out. And partway down, I had to slow up and look at the 3 levers and figure out which button I had to press because I'm not used to the bike. So 3:35 is pretty impressive for that bike, I think.
I forgot to unlock.
And I felt very comfortable on it with the bigger tires, and we have a lot of sharp corners with a lot of off camber, so I just felt more confident on the Genius by far, and really, really enjoyed riding it down there. And I'm positive I can pick up 10 seconds on this trail easily. So that's about it. I really liked the Genius a lot, and I loved the twin lockout. I didn't realize how great that would be, but when you get to a longer travel bike and you want to not suffer on the climbs, to be able to reduce the travel with a single push of a lever instead of having to reach down and get one between your legs and get one out the front of the fork is really huge, in my opinion. I think it's just fantastic. So I think the Scott Genius, of all the bikes I've tried, is by far my favorite. You should go out and try one of these if Scott has a demo in your area. Oh, I almost forgot. They had the Scott Spark 720 aluminum, and it has big, heavy, flat pedals on it, and it weighed 30 pounds, 7 ounces. With 27.5 plus tires on it. 30 pounds, 7 ounces. They also had the Scott Spark 900 RC, which is their all-out race bike, which has a 100 millimeter travel fork instead of 120 and no dropper post. And it weighed 24 pounds, 6 ounces. That's awesome. 24 pounds, 6 ounces. That is. A friend of mine was there with his Intense Primer, which is a 29er with 130 travel. He removed the dropper post and has the factory build, which cost $10,000, and his bike weighed 25.7. 25.7. Wow.
Should be for a $10,000 bike.
So the 2 bikes I demoed were the Scott Spark, which is in their cross-country lineup, and the Scott Genius, which is more of a trail bike. And since I really didn't see any difference in climbing speed between the two, I'd much rather have a 150 millimeter travel bike. I am a little worried about that canister here. The bike did seem to squat a lot, and when I sat on it, it's like too much sag. I went back to the guy and asked him to put more air in, and he did, but it still sagged quite a bit. So I have a feeling I might need some volume spacers in there because I'm kind of heavy. Okay, I think I figured out why my time was so much longer on the Garmin 810 GPS as opposed to the iPhone. And here's this problem. I came across this road. I came down a trail here, which is barely visible there. And then I went across this road right here and then into the woods and up a trail. And this track and this track should coincide because I went up this trail and I came back down the same trail. So there's a little bit off. And this is with my iPhone. The segment starts like right here. I think the iPhone recorded it correctly because I went by it and then I came back down by it and across here, and I obviously didn't go straight through this building. So, these tracks should be right on top of each other and they're off, and this is probably about the right location. Now, if I look at the Garmin file, it doesn't even go out to the road, and so I came in here, I went this way, but apparently the Garmin probably started recording the track prematurely. So I think that's why my climbing time was so far off with the Garmin, or so much higher with the Garmin than it was with the iPhone. Anyway, thanks for watching.